So just about to start the third video for this painting, and I'm just hoping that it's going to be in focus, because I do join you a little bit bruised because I've just worked on this and done this whole video already, and then I realised when I had a check of it that it was out of focus, so I had to wipe everything off and I'm going to start again. But hopefully that will have been a valuable experience. I haven't quite worked out how that's going to be valuable, but that's what happened. So we'll just do it again, but hopefully I did learn something on the way. And so I've just, as I said, I've rubbed it all off, and then I've oiled out again, and so just a little bit of alkyd medium. And actually maybe it's a testament to the great quality of the alkyd medium, because it's extremely durable, and it took a fair bit of vigorous rubbing, and it hasn't changed it at all. And I think with linseed I would have had to have been a bit more delicate, and could have possibly lost some of the original work that was on the glaze before. Anyway, without further ado, this is the palette that I actually sort of ended up with after the last session, and here I've got a mixture of burnt umber and black, and this is for the shadow areas, and so generally that's what I'm going to work on today. So yeah, I've got my reference, and I'm starting with a hog's hair brush. It wasn't dark enough, and so I need to just go over it again. I'm going to use a hog's hair because I just like the quality of that, especially when I've oiled out properly and the surface is very slick, and just the paint sliding around a little bit, but not too much. It's not sloppy in any way, but it's just very, very nice and satisfying to work. And you can use a sable brush. I'm going to use a sable brush in a minute to just smooth it a little bit. But they have different qualities, these brushes. So hog's hair is pretty nice for getting the paint on initially, and sable brushes are then nice to smooth the areas of paint that you've just done. And also hog's hair brushes in turn can pick off areas where the sable brush has left too much. So yeah, it's heartbreaking because I had actually done all this quite well, and I thought I was really happy with it, and then it all had to go. So hopefully we'll be able to arrive at a point where it's as good as it was. But I was really happy with it. I did all the background and everything as well, so you can see that when it's done. So this is actually the sort of the value that I was sort of originally seeking, but I think it's nice to be able to go over it again. And you know, it's the imprimatura is great for the middle tone, but it's even richer with this sort of glaze on top. I'm going to put my other glasses on. It's all about adding depth to it. That's just the beauty of glazing. So it's very, very dark in here. Very dark, I mean practically black, but this is still about 70% burnt umber and the rest is black. So it's fairly crude as I apply it. It possibly just needs a little bit of medium as well. I mean, all these leaves are going to be a bit darker anyway, so it doesn't matter just to go over them slightly. And definitely very dark in here. Maybe that needs to be done by black, because this burnt umber is very, very warm, almost too. I want it to be too warm. So I'm just looking over, just building up some of this shadow that I've used the imprimatura for the finger, but actually it helps just being slightly darker again. but it was also good. At first I thought I'd overdone it, putting the white on this his sort of middle finger here, his ring finger, and but in fact that just shows through quite beautifully underneath this further glaze. So again, just it shows that you can always change it. In the National Gallery of London's website, as I mentioned, Larry Keith wrote the technical bulletin, and you can see another version of this painting that Caravaggio painted. It shows the creases of the fabric, so you can use that as a reference if you want to create quite accurate creases. But for me, I'm just going to create just have a sort of loose impression of it, because I think that's enough. As far as I can see it from this version on my iPad, it's fairly dark, and that is really enough. It's doing the job for me. I'm not going to focus too much on getting it absolutely spot on, because I think I can sort of create a sort of enough of an impression of it. Okay, so I can use what I'm using. I've just used the hog's hair to just do the drawing. Hopefully the cat isn't meowing outside. She wants to be involved, but she's not allowed, because she'll just knock the tripod. Start attacking a wire. Okay. So this was all, the imprimatur is quite light, so I'm just going to go over it, and then it gives me an opportunity just to get a feel for some of the curls. And I'll smooth this line. I mean, obviously I had to sort of draw it once, and I've just painted up to it from the outside. So they're just, I mean, Caravaggio, as you can see, he just indicates it very, very roughly. It's just these little lovely little arcs. So now I've got my sable brush. I'm going to use the same mix, and sable's brilliant because it can hold a lot of paint. You can use it to sort of take paint off, but it's better at sort of leaving paint on the surface than a hogshead. Hogshead is more inclined to sort of, you know, it's good for pushing it around, and it'll take it off as well. But you know, with the sable brush, it's very good for sort of just applying it and leaving it there, and then I can go over it again with the hogshead after. Reference. So he's got this lovely bouffant hairdo. I don't want to put too much emphasis on it, so I'm just sort of getting some tone down. It's still very, very warm, which is to be avoided. I don't want it to be too much. It's all very well. It's nice to be able to see the underpaint, the imprimatura. I don't want it to be overwhelming at the same time. Just quite a nice sable brush. But I feel I'll definitely go over it again. There'll be at least one other coat over this one for the hair and the fabric. So the nice thing about the sable is that it does leave paint on the surface, but it blends it nicely as well, so it's not going to be, it's not too scratchy, it's not leaving these unsightly brush marks, which I don't want. So very, very dark in here. I think I'm going to have to just mix a bit of black because it just doesn't seem quite so warm. I'm just trying, that's quite a lot of black. I'm just going to smooth that in a bit. I'll just get a bit more brown. Tiny bit of medium. So there's quite a pronounced line there of shadow just as the robe meets his chest, gets tucked in, and then under there's a bit, so it comes round. And it's very, very dark in here. So everyone's different. I love a hog's hair, but it'd be fine to just use sable for the whole thing. Just find hog's hair, it just has a lovely sensation when the surface is oiled out, and you can just push the paint around. So it's all this kind of depth. It's nearly black under parts of this. If it's not enough, I'll just go over it again. Okay, so that was quite a lot of black. I'm just going to find another hog's hair. I'm using the black and I'm just putting a bit more burnt umber into it because I'm going to look around his face. Try not to have too much. I've got my trusty tissue paper here. If it just gets a bit too much, then I'll just take some off. So what I'm trying to just show, yeah, that's quite a lot. So just delicately floating around. And it's sort of putting it on and then taking it off again at the same time. I've got a hog's hair without much paint on at all, and I can just use that if I put on too much. You can honestly spend ages doing this, that's fine. It doesn't have to be this quick. But I'm just for the purposes of the demonstration, I'm just hairing through it a bit. Trying to just deepen these shadows. But his lower lid is definitely not quite as dark as that. And you've got the nostrils. They're just a little bit, whoops, a little bit darker. And there's a shadow, deeper shadow under his nose. You can see how it just picks it off again. The shoulders darker just here. But it's just the same principle. All I'm doing is deepening the shadows. That's all I'm doing. And it's just a thin glaze, and this could be broken into 2 glazes, 3 glazes. Spend a bit more time, spend some more time doing the modelling. Sometimes it's very good to just, take it slowly, walk away, turn it around, leave it facing the wall so you can't see it, walk away, come back with fresh eyes and just see how it looked. It did look, it was quite dark the last time when I just did it, but I didn't really see that until I'd stepped away from it and just walked out of the room and came back, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, too much. Just slowly with the hog's hair. Sable's very good for that as well. This line, it's probably, I've overdone it the first time round, but it's all very dark around there anyway, that's really enough. We're not striving to create, it's not like a photocopy, it's also sort of trying to get as, of course we want to get as close as we can, but not to get overly bogged down in the details. I think just try and, in a way, in the last time I did this, I just thought, gosh, it's just sort of an amazing feeling, because you are doing pretty much the same sort of brush strokes, the same application of paint, and the same sort of process with the glazes as Caravaggio would have done 400 years ago, which is a sort of a funny feeling, really. It's just amazing to imagine him doing it in exactly the same way. Yeah, maybe not exactly, but you know what I mean. Just the same process, and this is as close as I can get to doing that. Just trying to avoid it being paint by numbers and just too flat. And so in that regard, I'm just allowing this imprimatur to show through, and that's exactly what happens if you look up at the top of the hair here. There's literally, he's just drawing in these lines. It's literally like these sorts of arcs. But I'll probably just wait until the very final glaze before doing that. That's what I meant by these brush strokes. Don't want them to be too ugly. So sable's very good for just smoothing out some of those. Probably need the bigger one again, but that's got a lot of paint on it. So I'll just take this and just wipe off some of that paint. And then we can. Ooh. Yeah, okay, so I can still just brush it in. Don't want to be too dark. That's not great actually. I think in the final glaze he's definitely sort of it's very warm, but I just wonder, I'm sure there's some red in there, some vermilion it would have been, just faintly. And so where I added this white before, it was maybe too much, but now I've glazed over it, it does work. So in the Larry Keith's technical bulletin, he just shows with an X-ray the layers of the glazes, and there are areas where it's very typical that he wouldn't just do it in a couple of goes. They're generally, the whole surface is covered with 3, 4, 5 glazes, which is roughly what we're going to be aiming for. And as it's too dark in some places, we can lighten it. If it's too light, we can darken it in the same process. So, or if I just sort of muck up the drawing slightly, I'll be able to just change that. I'm aware of it, and I can change it with a lighter glaze. See, there are these areas where the imprimatura just shows through around there, just giving it a little bit more depth. Okay, so it's definitely going a bit quicker this time. And one thing I wanted to do was, this was too light, so easy peasy, we're just going to go over, not worrying too much. We can still see the contour. I'm going to go and do the background. In his observations, Larry Keith mentions that the background was painted after, not necessarily the very, very last, but usually, or not usually, this is what he saw in this painting, that Caravaggio had painted the forms, and then the background was painted up to it, certainly around the shoulder area. And that's something that I often use, a technique where I'm using the opportunity when I'm painting a background, to sort of cut in, to carry on drawing. So I've done that there. I've cut right into the line, the pencil line. I don't want that to show as much as it is possibly. And then I realised, just having a look at this finger's probably wrong. It probably comes out to about there, but I can cut in just in the lower part of it. You'll see in a minute anyway. See these darker, it's just a bit darker. So very scratchy now, but that's just the nature of the hog's hair. I don't know if it's quicker to use the sable to start with, but it's starting to just take on, it looks a bit more realistic possibly. I don't know if I need to do it darker. And this isn't as light as that, so I can go all the way over that. And just to be aware that that is the thumb, obviously in front, but Caravaggio just hasn't even bothered to sort of draw the thumb anymore. Well, certainly from what I can see, maybe if we go to the National Gallery, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of small indication of a thumbnail there or something like that. Well, it seemed to work better before. I'll go back to where I remember it. So I've got my sable. I'm just going to just flatten it a little bit, smooth it out. Actually, that's all dark there. Also quite patchy. Yeah, it's becoming a bit. There's quite a lot of burnt umber on there, but I think that looks really good. And suddenly you can see it as against the background, and it starts to just stand out, and you can see the. Yeah, it just captures it a bit more. You know, the hand in shadow against the background. I've actually indicated this shadow up here, sorry, just looked over there a bit, and so I've indicated it with a pencil line, so I can just literally follow that around. It's just time saving. There. So we'll just, yeah, that's nice. Maybe it isn't nice. Yeah, that's sort of light there. So I can get this by just taking away the paint. So you can just see the imprimatura. The immatura. Okay, I do hope there's not too much glare here. Anyway. So yeah, I've just finished doing the hand, haven't I? Now looking at the hand, it's in the original. Oh gosh, right. Sometimes you've got to leave alone, haven't you? In the original, it's just about the same value, pretty much the same value. So this was, these are the mixes that I made as I fought my way through the background. And it's raw umber and white. So I'll turn it away so hopefully that won't have any glare on it. And I'm sure Caravaggio would have done, so we've got the imprimatura, I've done a coat, a glaze initially, raw umber and white, and I'm going to go over it again. And I think looking at the technical bulletin, you know, it would be very typical of Caravaggio. You know, you see this often in an artist like Rembrandt. You know, there's going to be a few layers, so just to create a great depth, you still want to see the imprimatura, and we're going to see the first glaze, and then it'll be the glaze we're going to do now, and then again on. So I'll just try and find a nice, let's get a new hog's hair. So I'm just going to mix this up. This was pretty much where I was. Let's just do some more. Don't want it to be too light. So, but it's just those two colours. See what this is like. Yeah, I reckon that's pretty good. I felt that the last background I did was quite light, so I'm going to make it a tiny bit darker. And there's some interesting effects here because you can see where there's this transition through around the hair when some of the hogshead will pick off parts of what I've just glazed on the hair, and so leaving the imprimatura because there's just some edges where it's just ever so slightly lighter, which is simply that. And again, it's just very green against this reddy ground, the red of the burnt umber as opposed over the or underneath this raw umber. And looking closely at the original, it's as rough as I'm doing it. I will go over it with a sable brush. And then this is what I mean by just sort of cutting in. It's almost like carving it, but always using the painting as an opportunity to refine the drawing. And I can just go over there. Maybe I didn't need to. So looking for a similar value, just a different chroma, is it? So cool against the warm. Cutting in as, look, here we go. So I can just draw that finger, cutting into the contour, just raising it up ever so slightly. Maybe that's not, yeah, maybe I still need to go round over the top, but it's just something I'll remember to do and pick up later. In the original, the hand is ever so slightly darker, I suppose. I'm making excuses now, but I was quite pleased with that. I'm just gonna, I do need to soften it, so what I'm going to do in a minute is get another hog's hair with no paint on it and see what that does. Just pick off, just try and smooth that area. You can we'll soften around the hair as well. So the surface feels really good actually. I got oiling out. It's just something I know I go on about it a lot, but it's so important, and because it can just really alter the painting experience for better or worse. If it's too oily, it's just really sloppy, not very nice, and not enough, and it just gets scratchy. So at the moment it's flowing really well. I think there's something to do with maybe because I've been using these brushes now. Actually I haven't been using this one, so forget that. I was going to say maybe the brushes have softened. This is just a nice brush. Hog's hair can be, well, yeah, some are finer than others. This is what I discovered just around here actually, just at the top there's this shaft of light. It's definitely lighter in this area, so I had previously just mixed in a lighter tone just up here, and it just changes around the hair in quite a rough way. So looking at the original, yeah, it's amazing. It just sort of, it goes into a very, very thin glaze around the imprimatura. So I have to go back, I don't want it to be that light. Just try and mix some of this in. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a professional would use something, a bigger brush, but just, I don't know. They say that's the difference between a self-taught artist and the pros. The pros would use the correct brush for the job, but the self-taught just sticks with the same ones, and unfortunately that's me. But whoever they were, what do they know? I don't even know where I heard that. So this is definitely a bit lighter here too, and then I got the angle of this a bit wrong. It's just a slightly shallower angle, but it definitely starts in the corner up here. So I'm using the lighter bit, it starts in the corner, and so it's something like that, maybe more. Maybe not quite in the corner looking back at it, but we can change that later. And okay, so for just need a bit more raw umber. Where's that? That's it. For some reason it looks like burnt umber on this tube. This is Michael Harding's raw umber. That was a luxury. Okay, so this is just a darker raw umber, that's all. I wondered if he'd put some green in here, but I really don't think he has now. It's just very, very green, this stuff, and I've not really appreciated that before. Not to this extent anyway, until doing this painting. And you can see it's just this, like, I'll just better get a sable brush to just smooth it a little bit in a second. But it's this sort of mottled in the original. I think it looks quite grey with this camera I'm using. But trust me, I'll take a photo of it at the end. It's quite warm. Right. So it does look quite cool, but I promise it's warmer than it looks. What I need is my hog's hair without anything on it. And what he's done is just gone around. Anyway, I can't recreate the exact brush strokes that he used, and he wasn't necessarily sort of taking it off to create this effect, but it just demonstrates that it's a mixture of, he's applying this very liberally, quite loosely, not really worrying too much about it, and allowing these sort of effects to conjure this illusion of the hair and where it meets space, and where there are, where many hairs create this sort of fuzzy look. That was technical. Okay, so this is the one I used earlier. I'll just smooth it in a bit. So it's just a bit more straightforward because I've just done this already. So I've just been through trying to work out how to do this, and now I know. So I'm doing it quite quickly now. But anyone, if there is someone who wants to try and do this too, you could take as much time as you like, and also to repeat, just try, it could be broken into a few different glazes. And Caravaggio would have done that too, I'm sure, just possibly, some of his backgrounds would have had just maybe a couple, some would have had 3 or 4. It's just you working until you get the right quality, until it works. So I'm just going to actually pick up some paint on this brush now. And you can see that actually there's a very, very subtle line in the original of where it's just like he's just taken a sable brush and just run it down that just the edge of the shaft of light. Not much, I'm just hoping that there's going to be enough alkyd medium in here. So it's just quite loose. Well, actually, yeah, maybe I'll tidy that up because Caravaggio did tidy that. It was quite tidy when he did it. So I'm actually a bit more white, a little bit of medium. So it's fairly light and it's from the corner. So just sort of quite actually steady strokes. This one, it actually goes right in there, doesn't it? So I can just, again, using it to make adjustments to the drawing. And you've got this one, and this curl goes round there, and there's a smaller curl in here, and yeah, something like that anyway. And it's just maybe a little bit lighter here, just a couple of patches of it, but it's just raw umber and white, and it just yeah, has a lovely coolness against the warmth of the imprimatur and the other glazes. Okay, right, I'm just going to get a bit more raw umber to do the darker bit. So it's quite dark up here. And on the original there's a sort of line, not like that. But again, you can just actually see the brush strokes. I'm not worried, please, just shouldn't be this rushed. I'm trying to create just a sort of a general effect that conjures it enough, but someone could spend a long time doing that. It might be close as the original, doing it fairly, not rapidly, but again, you can tell he's not worried about extreme detail. He certainly is in his still lives, but these areas of the painting, it's a lot looser, very, very loose. Okay, so I'll go over this again. It's going to have at least one more glaze, at least one more. So, and that will be exactly the same process again. Maybe just I'll see what it looks like, and we can use those glazes to further smooth over any sort of unsightly brush marks. Right, one thing it is lacking is just some of these creases around here, and then there is like this sort of arc of it. You'll see this in the other copy that is in the technical bulletin. I think it's in, I don't know, maybe the Lombardy collection or somewhere. And there's one other thing while we're on the raw umber and white. I'll use my sable for this. So very, very dark. That was just the sleeve, just a little bit of medium. So here, it's not dark enough. It's got to be just pure raw umber. That's it there. I'm just going to, I'll use a hogshead to get that off. So I'm just softening that. That's quite a pronounced cuff, or just there. So you just got this point, and then that's the edge of the painting. It's quite a miserable day here. Typical day in Devon in January, and it's just so the light's going a little bit. I can still see what I'm doing. I'll have to go over those bits of the jasmine leaves. I'll just go over, I need something really, really dark. They're practically, they're certainly a value darker than this sleeve, but I think that sleeve, looking at it, that's really exactly it. You can just, it doesn't need to be changed really, which is amazing. That's a discovery. I just, again, feel connected to the man. Just having done that, that's a really nice thing. Yeah, looking at it again, I've just zoomed out of the picture. There's parts of it. I'm going to take, this is the brush I used for the oiling out, so I'm just going to, it's a hog's hair brush, I'm just taking up a little bit of this paint because you can see the imprimatura a bit more just along the line of the shadow. And then just around here, it's just to scratch it off so it's not changing it too much, but it just allows the warmth to show through. It's really, it's quite loose, but I think I'll just go over that next time. So I'm just going to use a hog's hair brush to just model these forms just a little bit. Just take away some of the paint if I need to. And possibly just glaze over some of this white. See the where it really is the middle tone, the imprimatura works wonders just there, just along the line of the bridge of the nose. And so I've got my sable as well. Just check how much this actually has on it, not too much, because this lid's darker than that, than I've done it. Okay, just try and get a bit more on, not too much. That's quite a lot. I'm just leaving a little bit on here and there. And then this, just the light catches it. Just at a slight angle. That's too much again. A little bit of the line of the ear here. And the cheek. Okay, so just take that away again, and we could spend a long time doing this. I don't want to rush it. I want to get this right, but we could spend, it could be a whole session, it could be like an hour, 2 hours to just really get this spot on, but for the purposes of the demonstration this is enough, I really feel. And you might have seen on my Facebook page and on my website there's a young boy I did, and it shows the initial grisaille and then the first glaze. This is one glaze, and that glaze did take I think a couple of hours, so I'm not sure how filmable it is, but it shows that you can just create amazing effects very well relatively quickly. So if this isn't working, then it's all to play for, you know. I've got there's always room to mess around with, and that's exactly how Caravaggio would have done it if it wasn't working. He's just constantly adjusting and modelling the forms. So this is it's definitely this. So he's got quite a bulbous nose at the end here, but unfortunately, yeah, that hog's hair isn't great for that because it just pulls it off again. So I want it to be darker but not too dark, and that's the line of the nostril. So it's quite dark just underneath there. I think that helps. Yeah, that's good. That suddenly brings it forward a bit. If there's just the right amount of paint on, again it just sort of comes with practice, but you can put it on and manipulate it, pull it off at the same time, so you're just moving it around. And it's dark in his mouth, isn't it? It's not as light as I've done it. this as well is dark. I don't know, I haven't really got the line of the lip right. I think the really important and interesting lesson will be when I've got a portrait of my own that I can use to apply these techniques to. I think that's when we'll really gain a full understanding of what's actually going on. So yeah, I'm just going to tidy up this the grisaille now,
paint
this
the
grisaille
arm
and the glaze,
all of the drapery,
and
there, it's,
hopefully the face.
The
We'll see how we go. See how we get along. And so same process really, just very thin layers of paint. I just suddenly realised I can tell that he was using grisaille because of just the slightly cool tones. If you look around here on the original, you can definitely see the black showing through the later glazes. That's to me, that seems very characteristic of a grisaille underpainting. So it wasn't just white, and Joseph Shepherd was right all along. Remember, this is still going to have a colour glaze. Okay, so with the fabric, and these would have been the final tones for it. You wouldn't have added any more than just the grisaille. So I've got sable as well. I'm going to add a little bit of medium. So where the imprimatur is there, it'll show through, but I'm going to essentially just paint over with the same value and just use it as a guide for that. And just hold on to the drawing so that I'll have space to adjust it later if I so choose. You can probably hear the rain. It's a bit grim here. Hopefully it's not too dark. And I can do this with the glaze, but I'm just softening that. I know it's not quite as strong as I've painted it. I do need a marl stick, to be honest. I can't find my marl stick. Everything's in an upheaval at the moment. I'll just try and show a general principle. I might have to just sort of go away and do this again, where I can just sort of get really close to it, because it's not so easy to get the drawing exactly right from this angle. But just sort of give you an idea of the process, then that would be something that you can use. I mean, actually looking at it, I can go over it if I just get a bit of black and white. If I just get this quite sort of rich and a lot of medium, I can just darken this whole area. I can just start with like a glaze, just speed it up a bit, so more black. So there's just a lot of medium going on here. Not loads, but enough so that I can just rub it about a bit, because it's all fairly dark. I'm doing it so that I can see the underdrawing and the underpainting, underdrawing, underpainting. And you can see there's that catches the light along there, and then the rest is sort of in shadow, and then it comes up. You'll see what I mean in a second, when I can paint over the top of that. I can paint into this, and it's going to need another glaze there. I'm just adding a tiny bit of burnt umber. It's really very dark around in here. So look, this bit, it's very black really. This is what differentiates it from the brown robe. You know, the brown robe's very warm, and this is definitely cooler. It's got the black in, and black can be extremely effective in just sort of creating a shadow very quickly, just with a thin glaze. It's also very effective for painting shadows in hair, or painting hair, with a shadow. Because if you're painting blonde hair, I did a painting of my daughter, and so it's her blonde hair, and then I just did a very thin layer of black around where it was in shadow, and because of the coolness of it, it was just perfect. It just gave this sort of green bluish hue that was just right, just on top of the blonde hair that I'd already painted. It just sort of finished the painting at the time. And in the same way that I'm doing this with the black, I can go over it with the white as well. So the black starts it off, and then white highlights in exactly the same way, quite thin. So that's there. And you can also use this method, and then paint it on, and then just wipe it off with a cloth with a little bit of medium on it, ideally, so that you're still leaving a little medium on the surface, and then just helps it. Makes it a bit easier to paint still. So yeah, so this is really, it's quite black. There's too much imprimatura showing through there, but it's a start. This isn't working, so this is all black in here. Actually, this is the bit I did earlier, but it's so what happens is this white robe just comes up. There's a little bit. I am actually using hog's hair at the moment. Sable. It works equally well, if not possibly better. and that messy bit of grisaille that I'd done before just is wiped out. It's gone. You know, you have no idea that I made that sort of error. I was just seeing what it looked like, seeing how it felt, and then I run out of time and I started doing other things. But it's it just shows. I love that it's very open, and you know, even the mistakes are things that you can turn around in your favour. So yeah, there's these creases, quite strong creases in here. I admit this is very crude at the moment. See how the hog's hair can just pick it off as well. And that's quite a lot, that's too much there. It's probably about right for here. If I just go over that white, that sort of sends that highlight into the shadow. And these sorts of creases, it lends itself really well to that. I must try with the sable brush soon, because the imprimatura is showing through and just gives it the warmth, so it's not just really cool and quite dead. Oh dear, right. Just have to keep trusting, hold on, nerve. So I've done that bit, and then I've just got the sable now. Got to keep my eye on the drawing. I don't want to lose it. All of this is, yeah, so it's more subtle than this. There's less imprimatura there. It's just a fold, not necessarily a crease. Likewise there, so it's fairly sort of flat there. Oh. Right, let's see, I don't know if the hog's hair is going to be better. I can see the brush strokes that he used actually. This is hog's hair. That's quite pleasing the way, you know, I've painted on the glaze. First of all, it's been oiled out, then I've painted over the glaze of black, so there's a bit more medium in that, and then I can just work into it. Well, that's just, no, I've overdone it. But it just worked really well the first time. What are we going to do about that? There's quite black in there, so I could just paint the black over and just smudge it all back in. Point is, when there's just subtly, you know, you're just dusting it, and then likewise there, just a little bit, and that's how he would have done it. I'm sure you can just see on the original. So just getting a feel for the surfaces. Something you get used to, something I'm getting used to. and you're using the surface as a palette really to just blend and try and investigate the different colours. This is looking, is it looking more like fabric? It's looking a bit more like fabric. It's certainly not looking so much like an underpainting. It looks like it's had a second glaze, and it's looking a little bit more, possibly, I don't want it to be, I don't like, you know, realistic. What does that mean? We're not after realism, we're after, you know, it's got to look like fabric, hasn't it? It's conjuring an illusion, but yeah, it doesn't have to be realistic. So there's a pencil line there. Just blend it in. So I haven't got too much paint on my brush, that's really crucial. And so all of these folds, they're all following the, going over his arm there. And it's got a strong one there. I've said before, I'm a bit of a lazy drapery painter, and I'm all for just sort of creating, I don't know, I'm a bit slapdash with it. I'm pushing that way. So I'm just showing general principles. So that didn't work at all. If it's too much, just wipe it off. So no, I'm still on the hog's hair. I'm sure my nose has made an entrance, and I apologise for that. So something like that. There's no imprimatura. I keep saying that. All this is just a fold, so it goes down here. I think I'm going to have to get in later on and just work into this properly, but you won't be able to see me doing it because my head will be in the way. Make sure I've got enough medium. And this fold goes all the way down into there. Okay. Right, I'm going to move on to the face now. It's very, very light. This is, it could be my key, that's the sort of the lightest bit. Just going over the previous brush strokes, it just makes it, oh, I don't know, what does it do? I can just smooth out these brush strokes, the previous ones. I'm not really doing too much, but you can see straight away it improves it. I'm looking, always thinking about the forms of the face. You know, here's the cheekbone, and then I'm running round, and it's the part of the skull that has with the eyebrow there, and I'm just in, this is the eye socket, just catching the light here, right round to the lightest part on the cheek. So one thing I wanted to do is I just felt that the lips, the drawing's not quite right. Oh, sorry. So just, you can see just with a tiny bit of differentiation between the values with the grisaille does really help. I'm not really doing too much, I'm not really even modelling that much, I'm just adding it just in the areas where I feel it needs it. Just trying to create the illusion of shape, of the form. And you can spend, I wonder how long Caravaggio spent doing this, you know, a long time really, because it's so subtle. But it's all about the surface, because the surface has just got this oil on it. I'm able to just put the paint on and just move it around, and it's very, very thin. It's got a little bit of medium in with it, and I can even just go over the bit that I painted. You know, this is the really, really subtle bit, and so there's sort of, you know, it's a bit more marked just here, and then yeah, it builds up. This is something that I'll also create with the further highlights when I do the colour glazing. But which is the bit that's sticking out the most? It's sort of around there, this part of the shoulder. But my experience, the grisaille doesn't need to be too perfect. And you can make that a lot more subtle just with the glaze, in the same way that I've made, you know, something has changed, just there's a slightly sort of darker patch just around in his eye socket here, and then you've got just moving up to the bridge of the nose where it's catching the light, and the lightest part, just need a little bit of white and medium, is his cheek. But I'm going to go over that. It's not, to be honest, I've done it white here, but it's not as light as I'm doing it, and but that sort of, it always should be a bit lighter because the glaze is going to darken it. And so I think, yeah, we're looking nearly set to be able to sort of do a colour glaze over the top of this. And the colour glaze, I reckon, would have been, so vermilion, I'm going to use alizarin crimson and then yellow ochre. So just this is a tiny, a fraction of a value darker. Now I've lost the drawing there, and that's very annoying. But I can just go over. Oh, sorry, it's all my ball patch. Yeah, that's annoying, but I'll just go over that. It's okay. This needs to be a bit darker anyway, actually, that bit. I'll just get some burnt umber and black onto that. Just, yeah, gotta be careful. So as long as the drawing's there, we're fine. It's just ever so subtle. So here's this bit, it's very, very dark. I need some black on my palette. So I've got black, burnt umber. I'm just going to make this a bit more extreme. So I have in the past, when I'm sort of modelling, I mean, it's a great pleasure to sort of sit there and like paint a hand and spend a while doing it, you know, really trying to get the forms, you know, very well modelled. I don't feel like that's going to make really great viewing, so I'm speeding through, but just to stress that, you know, please, if you're going to try it, take your time, and the more glazes you do, in a way, the clearer everything becomes. So this could be broken into sort of 2 or 3 different glazes of just for the underpainting alone, so that it's really, really great. And then the colour glazes could be 2 or 3 on top. I don't know how many it's going to take for me to just show it. I reckon I'll be able to do it in another couple of films, hopefully. Obviously, I'm discounting the still life for now. I will try and do that. So yeah, when this is dry, we'll be able to go over it in the same way that we did the fabric. I think I'm probably going to, well, am I going to work into that a bit more? With the fabric, just try and find a nice unused sable brush. There isn't one to hand right now, so I'll just quickly grab this. And I'm just going to give it a wipe. So I'm probably just going to set you up. I'll just show you what I'm going to do, because Caravaggio has looked at these folds in the fabric, and I suppose just doing the black as I did, I've created this sort of shadow areas. So just making sure there's not too much on the brush. So I'll just have a look and see what that's like. But these are the fine details that he would have done really at the end. Maybe it's too much. I've rubbed it off too much is what I mean, and I need more paint. Looking at it, I feel that he's done a few different he's had a few different glazes over this. It just seems to, and he's probably used egg tempera or tempera, because it just has a very sort of opaque whiteness to it, and that's something you can achieve with that. But I haven't got that to hand, but we can get close enough with it. As far as I'm concerned, that, you know, that's brilliant, but that's not the subject of this video. Just to show that, you know, what, it's just a process. We'll just go over it. If it works, fantastic, and if not, then we'll just go over it again. And there's no end to it, really. Just always looking, where's it picking up the light? And this is quite a bright highlight. So hopefully that will just sort of give you an idea. Excuse me, gosh. Oh, there's definitely a lighter area in there. Yeah, I can just see, actually, looking at it now, how he's used in these folds, in these highlights, because it looks fairly dry, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be tempera. And I just simply cannot do those details from where I'm sitting, so I'm just going to wait, and I'll do it later on, and then you'll just see it. You just have to trust me on that one. I might just spend a bit more time off camera just finishing this off, so it's just nice and neat. Yeah, okay, well, while I'm here, actually, I quite like, the thing is about the hog's hair is it's just not leaving, doesn't leave so much on, so you can just lightly brush, and because the surface is the way it is, it's just ideal for glazing. So just and then of course this is how we'll later pick out the highlights in the rows here. You know, I'm using the hog's hair, but should really be using the sable. Okay, well, I'll leave that there for now, and so the next one, hopefully, we'll just do the colour glazes. Okay, so this is where the painting ended up when I finished it yesterday, and I know it's got a long way to go, and I know it's very crude, but I know also you understand that, you know, just for the purposes of the demonstration, I'm just sort of giving an idea of things that you can repeat. For example, with the background here, you know, there are brush marks, and I just need to go over it with a little bit more care, just spend a little bit more time. That's all, it's just a bit more time, but it sort of makes it unfilmable. But then when that is done, then I'll be able to get something that does approach Caravaggio's version. Likewise with the whole painting, all of the different aspects of it. So I just have to sort of keep going.